Okay, this is for Period 2 Algebra, and today what you're going to be learning is solving equations by multiplication and division. Class, most of this should be reviewed, okay? So, let's talk about, and actually it's one-step equations, so I would hope that everybody in here is strong with one-step equations. But let's talk about the inverse operations, okay? Inverse is what cancels out or undoes that operation. So if we have multiplication here, what's the inverse operation of multiplication? It's division. Okay, so if we start with division, what's the inverse operation? It would be multiplication. Alright, so let's look at this first equation. To solve an equation, you need to isolate the variable. So we have variable j. Okay, so we want to look on that side. The operation we see is division. So the inverse operation to cancel that out is going to be multiply. What you do to one side of the equation, you do the other to keep it balanced. So these threes cancel out. So on the right side, I have j, and on the left side, 3 times 8 is 24. Different signs is negative. Okay? So, always check your work, because in geometry, you're going to have to prove and write out each step what you're doing here. So, let's check this. When we check it, we substitute negative 24 in for j here. Okay, so does negative 24 divided by 3 equal negative 8? Yes, it does. So you know you're right. Alright, let's look at number 2. We're trying to isolate the variable n. The operation you see with the variable is division. So the inverse operation is multiply. We're going to multiply by 6. What you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other. 6's cancel out. So over here, I have 2.8 times 6. You are not using calculator, so if you need to write it out, write it out. 8 times 6 is 48. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4 is 16. Okay, so where does that decimal go? One place value here, so it goes between the 6 and the 8. So your answer is 16 and 8/10. Let's check it. Substitute 16.8. And for n, do we get 2.8? Well, guys, let's do this mentally. How many times will 6 go into 16? Twice. With how much left over? 16 divided by 12 is 4. How many times will 6 go into 48? 8. So we're good. Alrighty. Number 3, to solve this variable, we need to isolate your variable y. Operation we see is multiplication, inverse is divide. So guys, to keep your equations neat, just use your fraction bar for division. That's what it means. So the 9's cancel out. 108 divided by 9 is 12. So let's check it. Substitute 12. And for y, do we get 108? Let's see, 9 times 2 is 18, 9 plus 1 is 9, or 9 times 1 is 9, plus 1 is 10, so we get 108. Okay? Alright, let's see you do 4 on your own, and I'm going to do it quietly on the board. Alright, let's go to the next screen. Okay, now remember that dividing is the same as multiplying by a reciprocal when we are dealing with fractions. Okay, so what does that mean? What's reciprocal? So if I have 1/2, I have to multiply that by something to get 1. That's what reciprocal means, okay? So what I do is I multiply by that fraction flipped, because 2 over 2 equals 1. So when solving equations, you sometimes find it easier to multiply by the reciprocal instead of dividing. So, always works with fractions. So, let's look at this one right here, okay? So, we're going to isolate the variable w. The operation we see here is times. We're multiplying it by 5, 6. So, the inverse operation of multiplication is division. However, we're not going to divide this fraction. We're going to multiply it by its reciprocal. Because then I have 30 over 30, which cancels out to 1, which means I have w on the left side. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. Okay, so I have 20 times 6/5. No calculators, I'm going to cross simplify. Divide by 5, divide by 5. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. 1 times 1 is 1. So here's my answer. W equals negative 24. Well, let's check it. 5, 6 times negative 24. Does that equal negative 20? Let's cross simplify. Divide by 6. Divide by 6. 5 times a negative 4 is a negative 20. Okay? See if y'all can do number 6 on your own. And if you need to, you can look up here. Okay, so we got a word problem here. I want y'all to read the word problem to yourself and go ahead and underline key information as you're reading it. All right, let's look at this. So, we have 1/4 of the money he earns mowing the lawns, which is what we're trying to solve for. So let's put M for the unknown, equals what he put in the account. Or put in the fund, okay? So there's your equation. How do you solve that equation? You would divide, inverse of multiplication is division, but instead of dividing by a fraction, let's multiply by the reciprocal. So, M equals 285 times 4. So let's see what that is. 5 times 4 is 20, carry a 2. 4 times 8 is 32 plus 4, 34, carry a 3. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 3 is 11. Okay, because this is a word problem, let's go back and see if we did everything we needed to. Did we write the equation right here in red? Did we solve the equation right here? Okay, so what does that number mean? It means that he earned 1,140 mowing yards. Okay? All right, guys, that is the phone ringing on the recording, not in class. That's it for today's lesson. You all have a good one, and now you're going to start your practice.